This is a video about Sid Meier's Railroad Tycoon, the original 1990 version, which is now 35 years ago. I still enjoy playing it. I won't go into the rules, but I'll try to put a link in the description. Uh, this video is about a strategy that I like for a guaranteed win, retiring as President of the United States in 3 financial periods, that is 6 years, and occasionally as few as 4 years. There are no cheats involved in what I do, but I would say there are exploits. Um, it's done in the western U.S. on the hardest difficulty settings. Now, my technology is not good enough to support video for this, anything better than taking pictures on my phone. Um, so the video will not be very exciting. But the first picture here is the wide-angle view of a winning system. And here's how you go about doing it, the basics. You make terminals in somewhere between 3 and 5 good eastern cities, and you give each of them an engine shop and a post office. And then you funnel track from them together into a single line that goes out to the west coast. In the next picture here, I show this eastern part of it zoomed in a bit. So when cargo is available for a full or nearly full train of 2 cars, 1 mail and 1 passenger, you create it and send it to the west. There are no signal towers. Each original terminal track is always set to proceed, and you need to space the trains to avoid collisions. That's up to you, but it's not really all that hard since all the trains are identical. Here's a bit of video from a zoomed-in view of the eastern cities. It's not very systematic, sorry. And here's what it looks like out west. Now, note that there's a station there for Reading, and it is crucial you not actually build that until the second financial period, but that's a detail. So here's how it goes. During the first period, all your trains are chugging along cross country from east to west, and none of them have arrived yet. So at the end of the first period, you have 0 income and your stock goes down to $1. Now, the next period, as the trains come chugging into a newly built station, they earn something like $900,000 each. You can easily buy 90% of your stock once it starts out at $1, $10. And then the income you get should be around $12 million for that whole second period. And based on that, your stock will go up to $200 or so. And as the money rolls in, you buy stock in the other railroads, usually up to 50%. And then when the price falls again at the start of the third financial period, you can buy the rest of the stock at the usual deal they offer of double price. And that gives you the doubling in bonus from owning three railroads that you get in computing your score. And by the end of the third financial period, you will then get credit for the 90% of your stock that you own that is now worth a whole lot of money, and you win. And I'll note that continuing to make 20 odd new trains each financial period naturally gets tiring and doesn't feel particularly natural. But after you win and get some more money together, you can make a parallel system where those same trains circle around and get cargoes from western cities and travel east along a separate one-way track. To do that, you need money usually involves paying off the bonds of the other railroads so they don't go bankrupt and accumulating about $10 million or so. And then you can build that second half of the system and it will really run itself, and you no longer really are doing anything even against the spirit of the game at that point. So that's the overview. Now for the details. The main thing that's going against the spirit of the game is all these one-way trains where you are earning the payoff as if it's calculated on the day-to-day assumption about how these railroads work, but you're only actually paying the costs on the month-to-year time scale, the one that's used for railroad construction. So here's what you do in detail. You sell bonds to get the maximum of $5.5 million and then freeze the game. You build the track and choose the route carefully, but feel free to splurge on tunnels. Since all trains are only going west, the restriction on single tracking of a tunnel isn't a problem. Wooden trestles are also fine for crossing rivers because they never wash out in the first few financial periods, in my experience. And then when you're planning this out, you find a city in the west that will pay for mail and passengers, but you do not build a station for it. Instead, you build the track beyond it, several squares, and then build a depot. And then your schedule on all the trains is just to go to that depot, and you make them all local. And that station that pays off will magically appear just in time in the local system for them to earn the big payoffs. Now, the game is set up to prevent you from buying stock or issuing bonds or building track if you're broke. But it doesn't keep you from building stations or building trains. So you can go into debt, $1 million or more into debt, as long as you have all the track built. You can even wait to build your original stations in the east after you're in debt, though I've rarely had to do that. The way I actually work out, I have enough money to do at least most of that first. Okay, and once you have these trains going, you do keep an eye on the map. But if you miscalculate you see, a collision is imminent here, well, then you just bring up one of the trains and retire it, and collision avoided. You can also save the game frequently in case something goes wrong. So you want the double payoff bonus for a new station. So only after the first period is over do you build that station in the western city that will pay. It was Reading in my example. And since all the trains are set to local, you don't need to change their schedules. They're scheduled to go to that depot to the west of your city, but since a station appears that'll take the cargoes, it will pay for them, and it will pay a lot. But then at the start of a third financial period, you remove the track to destroy the station, then you rebuild the track and build the new station. And then you'll get double again. But I know you cannot do that for the first time. If you build that station in the first round and are in debt, then when you go to make it go away, the only way I know how to do that is to actually remove the track to make the station disappear. But if you're in debt and remove the track, you won't be able to build it again, and you'll be pretty much completely sunk because you'll never earn any money. So you also want to take advantage of the double payoffs for east-west rates. Now, I didn't realize this at first myself. I found a tip online about this, but you want to be sure not to make a transatlantic route because although you get $1 million bonus for it, as soon as you do that, then the doubling of the rates stops. And in fact, the doubling of the rates is worth far more than that $1 million bonus. So, what's a transatlantic route? Well, West of Burns, along a straight north-south line, defines the west, and east of Wausau defines the east. So if you have a station in both of those places, then you have a transatlantic route. So make sure to build only in one of those regions, not both. And what I've found is that if I'm planning ahead for a round trip system, then it's much harder to find good western cities that aren't truly in the west. Whereas there are quite a few good eastern cities that are basically east but don't qualify as the east for purposes of the transatlantic railroad. So typically I never build an initial city east of Wausau. Um, I estimate that about 3/4 of the time you start the game with 10-wheeler locomotives available. Otherwise, the best you have is an American. Um, I It's obviously easier to win if you have the 10-wheelers, but I believe I've actually succeeded in winning even if all I have is Americans available. Now, as for getting the other railroads, fairly often you can kind of steal them. What I proposed for what almost always works is you just buy 50% of them, and in the bidding war, the price goes up quite a bit. At the end of the financial period, it goes down again, reflecting the actual income of the railroad, which is way less than that price would suggest. And then you buy them, at the double price as usual. But you can often steal them, as I would call it. Uh, they will buy based on knowing your cash at hand. So if you're poor, they don't necessarily feel the need uh, to buy any of their stock. But suppose you have 400,000, and if you know that one of your $900,000 trains is about to come in uh, during your bidding war, then you can start the bidding war, and they won't be alerted to start buying to keep you from taking over the railroad. Um, Sometimes the AI just doesn't calculate quite right, uh, and you don't need that. But when you get a pile of money, they will be sure to buy their first block of stock to be ahead of you. But if, for instance, they have 10,000 shares and you have none, and if their stock is like at $15 and they're down to 400,000 in cash, something like that, then often you can just get 60% of it before they can sell enough bonds to get up to 50%. So, um, and also the thing about rolling over the bonds is, if it's in normal times and it gets to be prosperity, and they have $1 million in bonds, they will immediately sell those two bonds, often giving them negative cash. And if you wait till they're down to having sold all their bonds and start buying their stock, then you will usually easily come up with 60% of the stock before they can refinance their bonds and buy enough to stop you. So, a little detail is that often when your stock at the end of the second financial period goes from like $1 a share to $200, it will sometimes say the investors are outraged. But that's just the sort of reporting wraparound error from 1990 era software that happens. But the actual accounting is fine. Um, so similarly, sometimes when you retire, it'll say you've earned a bonus of minus $17 million, but in fact it calculates right and says yes, you are president of the U.S. So in terms of building the track, your goal is to have the 45-mile-an-hour track as much as possible with everything perfect, no grades, straight track. Um, Curves and grades, including the one after a river crossing, will reduce the speed to like 40 miles an hour, and occasionally less, but often just a sort of minimum reduction. And if you do them close together, then you kind of can get both penalties out of the way at the same time, like, make a small curve, cross a river, another curve. Um, there is also an actual bug that you can use if you're willing to do that. Um, the system naturally, the rules prevent you from building cities too close together. Uh, and it checks like you can't, with a terminal, you can't be within 3, no part of the other station can be within a radius of 3. Um, but in fact, if you build a terminal and then build a signal tower right next to it, and then go to the signal tower and say build station, that check is not in effect, and you can actually build another terminal right next to it that will generate, will also draw resources from almost all the same squares as the other terminal. If you really want to earn bucks and you uh, don't mind using that kind of cheat. Um, Sometimes if you start your trains going right when the cargo becomes available at the beginning of the game, they will get to the end of the line before the end of the first financial period. And um, it's not a problem if your depot is in the middle of nowhere and won't pay for any cargo, but you certainly don't want it to come into a depot that earns you a little bit of money, because if you earn a little bit of money, then your stock price doesn't go down as much as you'd like it to go down. Um, but as with collisions, you can just disband any train, or you can wait a little while, as determined by experience, to before you actually start your first train out from the east. Um, Building the return system is can be intriguing, because you have to make sure that the AI's idea of the shortest route between two places matches how you actually want them to go. You don't want them, deciding to go the wrong way along your track. Now, once you're actually building the real system, you're adding signal towers. Often, I find I'm adding them like every 7 or 8 squares. I'll put in a signal tower. Um, there can be, and one of the beauties of this thing is that ordinarily with a real railroad you have to deal with occasional slowdowns to deal with other traffic. But with one of these systems, once you get them funneled together, once you get the tracks funneled together, and you have a train that's going, say, west, nothing is going to get in its way. It will not be bothered by any other train, because the one behind it has started at a suitable distance, and it will never catch up to one in front. So that makes for nice big payoffs. My example was a system from the St. Paul, Rock Island area out to the west, and I find that's often the easiest one. But you can also start from cities along the Arkansas River, like Fort Smith, and you can cross to the northwest often. Once I even built cities started in the Pacific Northwest, when Eugene, Portland, and Richland were nice big fat cities, and I'm sure there are many other combinations you can do too. I think a lot of people discovered that you know the natural human tendency to want to build a huge, humongous, profitable railroad is there. But in this game, there's a 32 train limit, which is also sort of a quaint reminder of the 1990 date when this was made. There's also a limit on stations. So, for instance, you can't, you couldn't say build tracks that would, build 3 or 4 of these loops across the country, because you'd run out of ability to have enough uh, signal towers. So, no individual piece of this did I really discover on my own. Um, But I never have seen anyone else who put it all together like this, and probably they have, and I just haven't seen it. But some key insights that I had were realizing that the double payoffs stop after the transatlantic route is finished, so making sure not to do that. And then also realizing, though it was not intuitive to me, that even if your train goes through a station in the middle of nowhere that doesn't uh, pay for any of the cargoes that are on your train, the program still resets at that point and only gives you credit for carrying your passengers and mail from that point on. I believe that's it. You certainly don't get credit for the whole thing. Okay. I just, it's just a matter of taste, but yeah, the system gives you these ding, 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 ding sounds when the train gets in and you get your payoff. And when it's a big one, it goes on for a long time. And I usually leave those on. I just uh, like to kind of get the audio input that I'm making a huge amount of money. So that's it for now. Um, I don't really care if you like, share, or subscribe. I mean, if you want to, go ahead. You don't need to do it as a favor to me. I hope you enjoyed it. Uh, Thanks.